Hey everybody, we got some new Punisher that just dropped, and it is like the return of Marvel WTF moments. I know I do a lot of videos that are WTF moments for episodes, but I feel like Punisher is the one that actually delivers that kind of stuff, because I think people were surprised by how tame Defenders ended up being. But here's the really cool thing. This is basically a character teaser, so we know about what's going on with Jigsaw, we know about Rollins, the other big villain of the series, and we know all the episode titles, and they're just laced with Easter eggs. But really, like, the big thing here too is at the end they tease the release date. Obviously they have this big decoded theme going on with classified data, so the Punisher is going to be using Karen Page to try and dig up a lot of classified data from back in Afghanistan. They say Kandahar. There's a big Iron Man Easter egg in there too, so there's just a whole bunch of stuff going on. Let's start with the characters first, then I'll talk about the episode titles and the release date. But like I said, because he's a Marine, it's probably going to be November 10th. I believe that's the Friday, whichever Friday that is in November, because it's the birthday of the Marine Corps on that day. And then the next day after that is Veterans Day. So they have like a rare opportunity to do something really cool with a series that's just very appropriately timed. I don't know if they planned this out when they originally envisioned the Punisher series, but they're like, okay, we're going to film it and we're going to release it on Veterans Day because Punisher is a veteran, and his series is all about the demons of war and what comes home after. But the first big character is obviously Jigsaw. You know him from at least some version of the Punisher, either the comics or the former movies that he's been in. This version of the character was part of Punisher's unit in Afghanistan. So all the crazy shit that happened to Frank over there, you've seen snippets of it in the trailer, him going up against Rollins, things getting really crazy. Jigsaw went through that too, but it sounds like, what'll happen is they all come home and they all deal with the trauma in their own ways. He takes a darker path. Punisher becomes more of an anti-hero. So the series is actually describing Jigsaw as his former best friend. So we'll see how that relationship deteriorates and all the crazy shit that throws them into each other's path. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jigsaw now in present day is working for the mob just like he is in the comics, but it's just that their origin story is a little bit different just to make it a little more personal, which I think is totally fine. You get Karen Page, obviously know what her role is. She's basically the mouthpiece of the Punisher to try to give a voice to all this crazy stuff that's going on and helping dig up classified data for him. And then you have Rollins, who's a big villain from the Punisher comics, but in present day, he's become part of the CIA. So he's like the wolf in sheep's clothing, like the psycho back during Afghanistan, who's just put on a different suit and become a psycho for a different government agency. So he's really like the Kingpin of the Punisher series, although not to forget the actual Kingpin. His connection to Punisher is really through organized crime, and there's a big element of that during the Punisher series, but I don't know if we'll actually see Kingpin during this. But they did say the next time we meet, one of us walks away, and Kingpin was like, I'm counting on it. So I already posted that video about Defenders Phase 2 and how I think that the Kingpin will be like the new big boss, the new Thanos of the Defenders series, a fully actualized Kingpin. Right now he's still stuck in prison. Eventually he's going to get out and just stomp all over the heroes. Matt Murdock first, so I think the first time we see Kingpin in the Netflix universe again, it'll be during Daredevil Season 3 because they're doing the Born Again arc.
You screw with me now, just a little bit, and you'll never really be with your one and only Vanessa, ever again. Speak her name again! Go ahead!
So for now, Punisher is sort of off on an island by his own, but Karen Page is the big crossover. She's like the Claire Temple of the Punisher series. This character is an original creation of the show. She's a Homeland Security agent named Dinah Madani. She's just after Frank, but she's not necessarily an antagonist, but she's after Frank, so it sounds like there'll be some sort of crossover by the end of the series where she might help deal with the Rollins problem because he's in the CIA, so it implies that he's relatively untouchable. But then you might have recognized this as Micro. So Micro in this series is a former NSA agent that just helps Frank dig through all this mountain of classified data. So he's right out of the comics. The best I can say is if you're not a big Punisher comic book reader, he's like the Ned Leeds Spider-Man Homecoming man in the chair. But I love the way they weave in all these classified documents to this promo. Now, they released a slightly fuzzy version of this, so you can't read all the text, but it just meant to imply all the data that he's going to be digging through and all the crazy shit that they did back in Afghanistan. So it sounds like there's some big conspiracy, some next level evil shit that they did over there that Rollins is still engaged in, that Punisher is trying to hold him accountable for. So before this turns into like a 20-minute video, let's just do the episode titles. There's 13 episodes total, like the other Netflix series, which I think is going to be awesome. A lot of these have Easter eggs laden into them that you might recognize, but starting with episode 1, 3 a.m., 2 Dead Men, Kandahar, which I'll say is an Easter egg basically for the Iron Man series because that is where the 10 Rings operates from. So I'm not expecting to see Mandarin or anything like that, but I just love the connection to the MCU. So Kandahar is just a really bad place in Afghanistan inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Then episode 4 is Resupply, Gunner, the Judas goat, which a lot of you might recognize as a reference to the goat or the animal that leads the other animals to slaughter. So that's why it's called the Judas goat, because it's betraying its fellow animals. So obviously in the context of this, it's a military term. Someone leading their squad mates to slaughter. Episode 7 is Crosshairs, Cold Steel, Front Towards Enemy, which is actually what it reads on Claymore Mines. So these are all just obviously military references. Then Virtue of the Vicious, which is actually an Oscar Wilde quote, and it actually reads, patriotism is the virtue of the vicious. Then episode 11 is Danger Close, then Home, and then Memento Mori is the finale title. So if you don't read Latin, then that basically means remember you have to die, which is just an awesome reference to Punisher thinking about himself. Like he knows that this is a mission that's not going to end well for him, but it's also to the villains of the series like Rollins, remember, you have to die. Remember, I'm coming for you. If you were at Comic-Con, you saw a different version of the teaser where he's dismantling a bunch of drug organizations. So the series is generally pulling from Punisher Max, Punisher War Journal, all these different eras. There's no specific comic book run that they're adapting. And like I said, there's a few changes to the Jigsaw character. He's part of his squad now. They go from being best friends to being bitter enemies. And if you look at Ben Barnes here, obviously there are no scars on his face, so I'm wondering if his fight with the Punisher in Season 1 gives him most of those scars going into Season 2. But we'll just have to play it by ear, and who knows if he'll pop up during Daredevil Season 3. We might see a little bit of crossover. In Daredevil's stunt double is actually listed on the cast list for Punisher Season 1, so that doesn't confirm Daredevil's gonna pop up, because he could be playing somebody else, but it's always possible. So let me know what you guys think about this. Do you think that Punisher is going to wind up being the best Marvel Netflix series, or where do you think that it's going to rank on the list? Because Daredevil's still my favorite character, but I feel like Punisher, just from the sound of it, everything they've been showing us, looks like it could be the new favorite. So I have some new Marvel and DC to post this weekend. I'll try to get that out as fast as possible. But while you wait for everything, click here to learn all about Nightwing on the Titans TV show. They just announced who it's going to be and what's going on with that. And you can click here for brand new Game of Thrones. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.